Alpha, where we bring you cutting edge conversation while exploring the quantum possibilities. And guess what? We're going to do it again tonight, except we got some information that's kind of hot off the press, stuff that has not really been leaked before, shall we say. And it's so hot off the press that as soon as our amazing guest publishes or lets people know what it is, somehow these funny things happen where it starts getting disappearing, or if it's on the internet, it looks inky. So, strange things are happening. But tonight, I trust that everything is in divine order and we're going to be able to have incredible conversations. And before Augie tells you about our guest, I just want to thank you for being here. Thank you for the super chats. Thanks for the fun that goes on in the chat room. And if you have any questions, just put them in the chat room. I'm not in there yet, but I'll be in there in a few minutes. Augie, want to tell us about our guest?
Yes. All right. We have Mary Joyce with us, returning to Broadcast Team Alpha. And we have with us a real researcher, a digger, that has gotten behind the curtain and found many of the answers that we have been looking for, and some of the things we didn't even know we were looking for, but it's there. And I want to mention her website, that she writes an awful lot, and I have been there and I lost myself in it. I think I must have spent, I don't know, at least 2 hours looking at pictures, and man, oh man, are there some doozies of pictures of ships in the sky. Yeah, they don't have any wings or engines on them, but they are square ones, they are round ones, cigars, and all kinds of different shapes. And these, many of them have never been published before. So this is going to be good. We're going to talk about that. And her website is skyshipsovercashiers.com. skyshipsovercashiers.com. For those of you that like to go to the website and surf at the same time you're listening on the show. And these articles in there and the pictures, they're phenomenal. You just got to go see this. And I think also now she has written about, I think it is 5 books. And the last one is called Spy in the Sky. And we're going to be talking about that one primarily tonight. And there's some really interesting stuff in there that has been covered up for a long time, since governments and institutions discovered it. Much of it they don't want people to know about. So I want to welcome to the show Mary Joyce.
Welcome Mary.
Glad to be with you all. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
I love Nori's background. I just think that spaceship effect is quite nice. I love it. Anyhow, I was talking to Augie before the show a couple hours ago, and because of that conversation, I think I better briefly describe what this book looks like. It's a large format book, more like a coffee table book, and it's packed with photo evidence of things that are being hidden from the public. And it is our government that is keeping us from knowing about so many things. But this is not a book you sit down and see a lot of gray material. It is almost like a picture book with information that goes with the pictures, because I wanted to show people the evidence of what is being hidden. And Nori was asking me earlier how I found these things. And some of the things I found with a tool that's available to everybody. And I used Google Earth Pro. It's kind of tedious, but I have spent, I don't know how much time scanning Mars, scanning Antarctica, scanning the moon, scanning the Earth, scanning the seas, using this tool. And I've discovered just incredible things. And the reason, there's several reasons I know the government doesn't want this information out. And some of that evidence of the cover up is in the book. I will show you images that I found, like of spaceships on Mars, quite detailed, and things that look like cities, things that look like habitats where people might be living now. And sometimes when I post these things, they will disappear off of Google Earth almost immediately. That's also true of things I've found in Antarctica. I've found entrances that go into the planet, and some of them are quite large. We're talking one that's about 300 feet across, which means any airplane we have could easily fly in there without a problem. Right after I posted that on the website, it was like somebody took a bottle of India ink and just poured it all over it. And so I show people the before and after pictures. It's that kind of evidence that I packed this book with. So it's not a book with a lot of gray material to read. In many ways, it's like the website. We live in a very visual world, and every story we have has photos or has some kind of visual to go with it. And I try to keep the words to a minimum because we're just in a fast moving society. And I think people are having less and less patience with things that take too long to get to.
Hmm.
Yeah.
These,
that happens.
That happens.
yeah. I was just
I'll
curious,
give you-
these pictures
Oh, go ahead.
from Antarctica, were they the ones over in there was Queen Maud's land in the northeastern part of it, where we kind of think that maybe the Nazis have their base? Is that in the area where you found it?
I don't know how close that is. The Nazis used old volcanic tubes
Yeah.
and expanded on them underneath the planet or the continent. And I think many people would be surprised that there are more volcanoes in the western part of Antarctica than any place in the world. And two of them stay active all the time. One of them has the lava still, you know, in a liquid state, and it'll erupt on a regular basis. Because of that, the ice is melting very fast. So another thing that we have in this book is we can see where ancient cities are starting to appear. Now, again, you don't find these things quickly. The first one that was found was like, it just looked like a black crack in the snow or in the ice. But then you plunge down into that crack, and here you can see the remains of a city. And the reason I say it's a city is because you can see the square walls like this, and you can see a complex of these. And we actually found, I think 5 or 6 different cities. And some of them spread out just like cities do today. It's almost like one looks like it's been spreading out along a river. But those are popping up rather recently because the ice is melting. And these structures that are being found are before the ice. That means they're at least 34 million years old. That's older than anything we know. I don't know the dates right off the top of my head, but the Pyramid of Giza only goes back like 5,000 years. Compare that to 34 million. So these kind of discoveries are remarkable and will
Wow.
probably be seen more.
Mhm.
But I've got at least, I can't even remember what I do anymore. I've got at least 5 cities in there in separate different locations.
Wow.
You mentioned Giza, but there's a pyramid on Giza in Egypt, but there is also pyramid in Antarctica. Could it be the same people, like pyramid builders? What do you think?
The Egyptians and those pyramids are in a total different time frame. So I suspect it's a totally different civilization, one that we really don't know much about.
Yeah, but I bet the technology is somewhat the same, because if I look at the Cheops pyramid, I see the angle. I think it's 52 degrees or something, like 50, 51.6 or something. But I look at the angle of the pyramid in Antarctica. I don't know what it is, but it looks about the same angle. So it may be some of the same technology.
It could very well be. I have not found that on my own, so I really can't tell you firsthand observations on that. I've seen things on the internet about it, and they may very well be true, but I also have seen so many things that are bogus that I get real jittery. I mean, it's like I have to prove things to myself several ways before I ever post it on the website. I'll give you an example, and this I just about put on the website. It was so convincing. Somebody had, I mean, there was a photo of a large rock, and it had hieroglyphs written on it. And this was on Mars. And I thought, man, that looks really real. Well, I went back to the original NASA photo that this was supposedly taken from. The stone was there. It was a perfect match, but it had no hieroglyphs. So one of these people who wants to trick us all had very, very technically, I mean, had done a super job, because I almost fell for it. So that's when I run into things like that, I go, oh, we have got to be careful, because there's too many people that get their kicks out of fooling everybody else. It's quite annoying.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sure.
And by the way, that came out of India, and I've seen a couple others out of India. And so there may be a whole group of people there. There's this, I can't remember the name of the city now, but there's a university there. And I began to wonder, are these university students just trying to outdo each other? And so anytime I see something from Mars and the source is from India, man, do I double check every which way.
So somebody in the chat room, Andromedan said maybe it's Atlantean pyramids. Any thoughts on that?
We have, I keep saying we because I'm so used to speaking for the website. The book is mine. It's not, I don't know why. I probably can't stop saying we, so I apologize for
okay.
that.
It's okay.
On some of my scanning of the oceans, I found 2 pyramids just south of the main island where NASA is, and Paradise Island. And they quite clearly are coming up out of the sand. And I think that's a different culture. Again, I think it's another time period. But this is a well-used planet. I'm convinced that we have had the Lemuria or Pan or Mu, it's all the same thing in the Pacific, and Atlantis in the Atlantic. Very different civilizations just between those. I have found, I'm sure I'm not the only one, but have found huge structures in the Pacific, and they're gigantic. We're talking things that are like 5 miles long, and they have windows and porticos. And then you can see another place that looks like a giant airport, but it's a zillion times bigger than any airport we have, and yet it's laid out the same way. So the structures are huge, the structures are different, and I suspect that the size of the people that lived at that time in the Pacific, you know, they were just quite different than the ones in the Atlantic. The pyramids are small compared to the things we found in the ocean of the Pacific.
Maybe they
So-
were giants.
Oh, I mean, these things are huge. When you, it seems like that runway that I found was like 80 times bigger than a normal runway. I mean, they're huge, and it's wedged in, what do they call it? This California Sea. It's on the eastern side of the Baja Peninsula. And anything I have in this book of that nature, I provide the coordinates. So anybody can take those coordinates, use Google Earth themselves, and go find these things for themselves, so that anybody can prove to themselves that these things are real and that I haven't put up bogus stuff either on the website or in the book.
Now that's unique.
That's
A lot of times you'll see,
verifiable.
oh, I should say something about my background. At one point, I was a newspaper editor, and I worked for the Orlando Sentinel, and I worked for the Open Press, and I know the importance of authenticating things. And so I continue to do that with the website. And sometimes I have to toss a great idea out, because when I really dig into it, I go, this doesn't stand up, and I have to toss it out. So that happens. I don't want to be gullible.
Do we have any pictures? People in the chat room are saying they want to see some pictures. Do
Well,
we
I have
any?
a book here. I don't know if you can see what I hold up or
Sage-
not.
Sage, you may have to get the book, which isn't going to be a
Alright.
bad thing. Look at that.
Can you see that?
Hmm.
And what
Yeah.
we did there is we've got like an astronaut on Mars with the Earth in the background. And it's because we cover our part of the galaxy. I've got stuff around the sun, the moon, out into deep space, Mars, stuff from the missions with the astronauts. All of them are photos. And anyhow,
Yeah.
Very nice.
I'm trying to see things that would hold up with me just holding it up.
Where can people find your book, Mary? Where can they purchase it?
Can you see that at all? Probably
Kind
not.
of.
All right, this
kinda.
right here is, and here's another one. One's this one, and then this one. One is, it's a biosphere that people can live in. And one is in the Northern Hemisphere, and I think it's like 700 feet long. And 5 years after that, I found one in the Southern Hemisphere. It's about 10 times longer than that. And so it's probably the newer of the two. So it's just amazing what's going on up there. And I need to quote somebody. I do quote somebody. There is writing in the book. There is a man, he was a professor. His name was Chaim Ashid, I believe, or something very close to that. And he was the head of Israeli space security for nearly 30 years. And in December of 2020, after all these years of him doing that kind of work, he decided to tell a little bit more about what he knew. He said he didn't have anything to lose. You know, he already built his career and he was not going to be intimidated. And there's two lines that he said that stick in my mind, though I can't exactly quote them. And one was that the American astronauts and the aliens are working together in an underground base on Mars. That was one thing he said. And when I found a whole line of more than 20 entrances into Mars that are contemporary, I thought, oh my goodness, that just really supports what this man is saying. And I found those almost by accident. Normally when I would go, or anybody would probably go and use Google Earth to look at any planet, you would go from east to west or west to east or right to left, left to right. And for some reason, I changed it and I started circling the planet from north to south. And that's when I found all of these lined up, and they're spread out over 16 miles and they all line up. They, at first glance, they look like they're identical, but they're not. They range in width from 400 feet to a little over 1,000 feet. And they're all square cut like this, but the edges around them differ from one to the other. So it's not like seeing an exact duplicate each time. But to have over 20 of these in a perfect line going north to south is just incredible, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Really,
Nature
really
don't do
interesting.
that.
No, they don't. No, absolutely
What's
not.
what's
And
one of the what's one of the most surprising things that you put in your book that just really made you go, wait a minute, what?
I think, I don't know if one stands out, because I think what stands out in my mind is what our government will go to keep us from seeing these things. And there's, for example, I found something that looks similar to what I found in Antarctica, that looks like a city structure. You can see the square walls like this. I had a perfect picture of it. I posted that briefly. Boom. They suddenly had a new strip on this side that was totally different than what had been there. And on the other side, it was still the same thing, but they had blurred that side. So it was impossible to see that that structure had been there. Thank God I took pictures before and after. So there's a
Wow.
lot of that in the book. And I think the idea that they will cover things up so thoroughly and so immediately. And I will tell you a story that if I'd told this to any show, I can't remember doing it. This was early on. It was before I had some of my real good security systems on my computer. And I was working on an article about UFOs for the website. And I was working on it in the evening. And I turned off the computer, went to bed, got up the next morning to finish the article. It was gone. I started looking around, and I had multiple files about UFOs. They were all gone. Now, this is in my house. I have an office in my house. There was nobody in this house that would have done that. And I contacted the man who was in charge of computers at the university that's nearby, and he came over to check it out. And he could not understand it. He said, there's not even, like, in the bowels of the computer, was there any remnant of these UFO files? And those were the only things that disappeared. So another time I was in contact with, I don't feel like I can mention other people's names, but somebody who you would know that's in these kind of subject areas. And I was sharing that information. I sent it, I went and took my shower, came back to the computer, and it had already been airbrushed out within the time it takes to take a shower. So,
Crazy.
so there's the cover up of it is just incredible, just incredible.
Wow.
Boy.
And that's to me, that is the biggest story. Now, personally, I got the biggest kick out of the things that are around the sun. And I don't get credit for discovering these. There was a man from the Netherlands who contacted me back in 2013. And he was taking NASA photos that are taken by the satellite. There's a SOHO satellite that constantly monitors the sun, takes a picture, I think, every 15 minutes. And so he was taking some of these, and occasionally you can get lucky and you'll find something that doesn't look right, that's right next to the sun. Well, he had the ability and the smarts to be able to use his computer to filter out the interference. And when he did, these structures are not only humongous, bigger than Jupiter, which is our largest planet, but they're metal and they're incredibly intricate. I mean, I call some of them, one of them looks a little bit like a flying Sphinx, and we call it the Sphinx Hotel. But in this book, this for the first time ever, these have been published, and you can see the enormous detail of these UFOs. Nobody can dismiss them the way NASA does. I found, and I include this in the book, there's on one of the NASA websites, it blows a hole on the idea that these might be UFOs, and they give some stupid bogus thing which you can read for yourself in the book. And man, that doesn't hold water when you see the detail on these. There's just no way that that's a comet or any other common kind of thing. If you ever, I mean, if you look at like a very intricate, what do I want to think of? Like a flute or a saxophone, and all the little keys on it and all the little indentations and all that. It's that kind of detail that you can see on these UFOs, and they're shaped many different ways. One of the rarest kind, in fact, this will be something I'll be putting on the website in about a week. One of the rarest shaped ones is a cube shape. And one day I was just spending time at the Soho site and got lucky and caught one that was a cube. And it's, to this day, it's the best cube shot that I have found. There's been other ones, but they're not as good as that one. So I'm going to be posting that in about a week. And
Wow.
People just need to open their minds. Things are going on way beyond what we can imagine. These little saucers and triangles that we see zipping around the above our heads, they're nothing compared to things that are bigger than Jupiter.
Did you see that?
In fact, one more thing on the cube, because you're able to use a measuring tool with Google Earth Pro. And also, anyhow, I won't go into all that, but this thing is as wide as the sun itself.
Wow.
And it's out there floating around, and you just go, wow. So that's the kind of, that blew my mind more than anything. Now, I don't know what's happened to that guy. He was in touch with me for about 3 years, I think, 13, 14, 15. And then I just didn't hear anything from him. I contacted him by email, never heard from him. His not his website, but his YouTube channel went dead. It's never been used again since then. And I truly do not know what happened to him. I don't know if he was, it's a possibility he was threatened to shut up and quit doing what he was doing. But I had gone ahead and printed them because he sent them to me because he wanted to share these photos with the world. And if something bad happened to him, well, then I'd at least carried out his wishes.
Yeah. Did you see that picture also taken by the Soho satellite that showed there was a planet-sized orb sitting to the left of the sun as we would be looking at it, and there was a tornado coming off the sun, sucking up plasma going into that.
Yeah, we posted that on our website. It's an orb like this. Here's the sun. Here's this orb, and it's got like an umbilical cord connecting to the sun, like it's drawing off energy. And one of the cube shots that will be up in about a week, there's this cube emerging from the sun. So these vehicles have the ability not to burn up in that kind of atmosphere. That's certainly beyond any technology we have.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But even with the moon, it's really hard to find things on the moon using Google Earth because we've had a space program for so many years that the government's really been able to airbrush these things out. And I was just delighted when I had no hope of finding anything on my own, but I found a white pyramid that's 28 feet longer than a football field on each side. It's on the side of the moon that faces us. I could not believe I found it. And that is in the book also, again, with the coordinates so other people can find them, because that's important.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
if they're not blurred out, right?
Right, as of right now, they weren't blurred out. So hopefully other people will be able to find it too.
Amazing.
Well, chances are that the picture has been out there for so long that they know people know about it, so they wouldn't do them any good. Actually, it would harm them if they smudged it out, because then it would be obvious that they were trying to hide it.
We can only second guess them. You just plain do not know.
So who do you think is on watch, right? Who is on watch and goes, oh God, Mary Joyce just got a picture of this on the moon. I got to go do something. Who is doing that? Is this some guy at NASA?
I
Who
don't,
is it?
that would be my guess. I mean, that's a military branch of our government, and the most likely one that would want to keep it quiet. Now, there is information that indicates that the aliens don't want to be exposed yet to the extent that we would like.
Okay.
And that might be true. And so the humans may not be totally responsible for keeping the secrets. There are, in fact, the psychic medium that Roddenberry used. You know, Roddenberry with Star Trek. He got many of his ideas from sessions that were held with this psychic in Florida, and they had scientists and professors and all different kinds of fields of people that were participating in listening to her, and
Wow.
that's where he got some of his ideas. And I'm not sure why I was telling you that. There was another reason to explain it, but
Well,
maybe
yeah,
we'll
no,
come to-
you were saying that the ETs might not want to be
right,
shown.
right. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Thank you so much, because she was,
Okay.
that's one of the things that came out, that we weren't ready to really cope with the reality right in our face. And perhaps they're right. Maybe they just keep letting some of this out slowly. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
only way it can happen. I used to give human beings a lot more credit for being smart, but I've seen so much stupidity in the last few years. I just go, oh, maybe we aren't ready. I don't know. I would
Yeah,
suspect your audience is ready, but I'm not sure.
Yes,
everybody is.
yes. Our audience is pretty astute. But yeah, but you know, I mean, when we started Broadcast Team Alpha, how many years ago? 3 or 4 years ago, we were like,
4 or
okay,
5.
disclosure's coming. And here it is 5 years later, however many years, and we're still waiting for disclosure. But if we look, disclosure really is happening. I mean,
Oh, yes, absolutely.
back-
You guys are
back-
doing it. I'm trying to do it. There's a lot of other people. So
yeah.
that is increasing, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, and even on the, you know, godforsaken television, back when I used to watch TV, they didn't talk about ETs, you know, unless you went to a sci-fi movie. They didn't talk about some of the things that they're talking about now, that they're just weaving in right to
Right.
everyday sitcoms or thrillers or whatever the movie is. You
There's
know,
a
so
commercial right now. It's about almond milk, and there's a little girl having her cereal, making it with almond milk, and some little cute, cuddly little being from outer space comes and joins her at the breakfast table. So those kind of things are being worked in more and more and more. So it is conditioning people to be more open-minded. And of course, E.T., the movie,
yes.
was a step in that direction also. And that really was an ugly little thing, and yet everybody kind of fell in love with it.
Everybody still loves him, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And the problem is that people have been brainwashed into thinking that government actually tell the truth once in a while. And they're totally wrong. Now we are all being told that, yeah, we're going to go to Mars and look for fossilized microbes.
Right. They have I do not remember the name of it, but there is some kind of, I'll call it a conference that happens in Washington, D.C. every year. It's been going on, I don't know, since maybe 2012, 2013, something like that. And every year they talk about the future on Mars. Well, I'm telling you that most of the stuff they probably talk about has already happened. And it's already happened. For example, in the book, I have some illustrations of habitats that people could live on Mars. They were drawn in 1989. Well, I don't do math in my head very well, but that's quite a few years ago. So when I see two things that look like habitats on Mars, That's very believable because they were drawing things with that in mind that many years ago.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, they've been going back and forth to Mars for quite a while. That's kind of what I have found, and that is, the brain drain has been going. They taken engineers, they taken competent people up there to build that society, and we have, you probably was it agenda? No, it's there's a program that was called third. No, I forget I'll think of it.
Third rock from the sun, the
No,
funny
no,
one?
no,
No.
no, not that one. This was, I'll think of it in a second. I had just, no, I'll think of it because
Okay.
that's, they were moving people to Mars, and the people that they suddenly found their cars at the airport, they were missing, or they were driving out into a park and there's the car sitting and the people are missing. And these are competent engineers, high-ranking military personnel, and people like that. There was no slouch that disappeared. And some of them said that they're going to be leaving and they're going to space. One of them made that comment. And then Alternative 3, that was the program I'm thinking of.
I would never have been able to figure that one out. Sorry.
Yeah,
I've not seen that.
That was a real government program. If you guys Google it, you get an eyeful for the next 2 weeks reading there about what's going on up there from
Well,
people that come back.
Captain Randy Kramer, we've had him on. If you go back in the archives, we've had him on 2 or 3 times, and he said that he went to Mars for 20 and back with the Marine Corps. He's a United States Marine Corps captain.
Yeah.
Yep.
Pretty believable. Pretty believable.
They're up there. And when you have like this man who is in charge of the space security program from Israel saying our astronauts are there underground on Mars working with the aliens. I mean, that's a pretty darn good source of information.
Yeah, and then there are also people that their families have talked about the fact that, oh yeah, our son got hired by NASA, he's an astronaut, but nobody ever hear of him. He just disappears.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people that is astronauts, but nobody ever hear of them doing that kind of work.
The thing that befuddles me is we keep making a big deal of these rockets to send people to the moon or wherever. And I go, that is such antiquated form of transportation. They're not using that to get to Mars, So why do they continue this silly, almost like kindergarten program for the world to see?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
by the way, this is not in the book, but it has to do with Mars, and Augie had talked about this earlier. Not long ago, a man named Gene Ward, he's a Mars researcher in South Africa. And I don't know if he was the one that actually found it, but that's how I learned about it. And it's something ancient, but it's square cut, and you can see you can see it cracked where something is falling apart, but it is a doorway. And anyhow, it's just quite amazing. And your little one wants to go somewhere.
She just has got to be on camera.
TV.
So there's a question, Mary, and I don't know if this is really a question for you, but it says, I live in Mississippi. What can Mary tell us about the Mississippi swamp ape video? Looks genuine.
I posted, I don't know if it's the same one. I think it's the one I posted on the website.
Oh, okay.
Great. To me, it is absolutely convincing.
Really?
And if you have a single shot of a swamp ape, which is another name for a Bigfoot, it won't convince anybody. But that is one of the, if we're talking about the same thing, that is one of the best ones that I have seen, because you can see the motion. We got another one with a swamp ape in Florida. Again, it's the motion. You can see this Bigfoot going through the water. We're talking, shallow water. And he reaches in and he grabs a snake and that's his lunch. So he doesn't even show up if you just see one thing, but you see him going through the water, catching the snake, and that's his lunch. It's the movement that becomes convincing. And if the Mississippi one is the one that I'm thinking of, I think it's a very legitimate one. I hope it's the same one.
With everybody worried about their pronouns and who they identify as, I wonder if the swamp ape is upset about, being swamp ape or Bigfoot. Swamp ape. I'm just kidding.
Well, I don't think they care. Do you?
I don't really.
And what's interesting, I have a book called Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints. And one of the stories in there goes back to the Civil War. And at that point, we didn't have the term Sasquatch. We didn't have the term Bigfoot. We didn't have any of those terms. Well, this guy he should have been dead. He was, severely injured during the Civil War. He was saved by a Bigfoot, a clan of them. They came and picked him up, took him into the cave, and he just referred to them as forest people because he didn't know what else to call them. So who knows what the Bigfoot call themselves? These names are all put on them by human beings, and I doubt that the Bigfoot pays any attention.
Right.
By the way, I'll briefly mention that book. Again, it's Bigfoot Beyond the Footprints. Totally different angle on the Bigfoot. People get off on the monster and the creepiness of Bigfoot and how scary they are. Well, they have families and they have a very human type behaviors. They have language. We have Bigfoot here in the mountains where I live. We did experiments with them to find out which foods they like. They have preferences on food. And for some, I don't know why this is popping in my head, but during our food experiments, we put the food out in different containers in a place where we knew their path was or where they went off and up the mountain. And anything with a handle on it, they would not put their hand in it. They would tip it over and take the food out. When we put a basket without a handle out there one day, they picked up the whole basket and took it down the road with them. I suspect that they have some bad experience with traps or getting their hands caught in something. And they wouldn't, anything with a handle on it, they wouldn't stick their hand in it, which I found very interesting. And by the way, they're a lot like kids. They prefer fruits over vegetables. In fact, we tried a bunch of different ones, and like the asparagus got spit out. But anyhow.
Yeah, they've been spotted everywhere, and it just amazes me that it's not recognized. In fact, about a year ago, I did a short video on Broadcast Team Alpha about there was a forest fire up in Nevada, and a huge swath of forest were burning up. And the fire trucks and everybody was there at one side, and out of the fires came running a Bigfoot. And he ran up to the fire trucks and he sat down, because when they came over to him, they saw that he had burned, a 3rd-degree burn, so a big part of his body. He wanted help. So they took him, put him on a stretcher, and they put some salves on it, and they took him off, and nobody knows what happened to him later, but he needed people's help because he knew that he probably would perish if he didn't get some help for the wounds.
That's a very touching story.
It is.
Is that one that I would certainly give you credit, but is that a story that I could get and put it on our website?
In fact, it was written up in the newspaper with one of the guys that was on the fire crew. And I got it from the internet by looking at the paper.
If you could send me that, I'll give you credit for letting me know about it. I just think it's a very touching story that more people ought to hear.
Yeah, it's right on Broadcast Team Alpha to down in the about a year or so down in there.
I don't know if I can do this.
Down a year or so. That's
about a year or so deep. That
Yeah,
gets hard, I know. But you got my email. Send me any kind of a
yeah,
link to get me started, and I'll give you credit for letting us know about it.
yep, that sounds good.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah. Oh, what about the rest of the planets out there? There are, what, I'm gonna, you know, we don't know much, but I want to hear your opinion on what you think is behind the big circular tornado on Jupiter, I think it is. But
I don't know. I
oh,
know the things that like around the sun, you're talking about a tornado. Those are the solar storms or the sunspots that explode on
yeah,
a regular
mhm.
basis. In fact, you may have had interference with your computer or your television this week. Have you? No?
I have.
Yeah. Mhm.
Because we certainly have here. And then I found out there'd been another solar storm that, came toward the direction of Earth. And that affects our electrical grid big time.
Where are you, Mary? Are you North Carolina? No,
I'm in the mountains of North Carolina.
you're in North
And
Carolina.
from where I live, I look up at the top where the Blue Ridge Parkway is. So I live in a really, really pretty place.
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
So
And
we
then
had,
there
since
are,
when I moved here, I had no idea I was moving into a spot that would be so interesting. I knew the scenery was nice. I love the mountains. One of my second book was about the little people. We have little people here in the mountains. When I wrote the book, I gave it the title Cherokee Little People Were Real. Well, I would do the book differently now because I have gotten evidence since that book was published that there are still a few of them that are here in the mountains to this day. So we have little people, we have Bigfoot, we have secret underground military bases, we have remnants of giants. It's just quite a remarkable place that I found myself. And it's provided a lot of ideas for the website.
It's
Well, it
funny that you bring
inspired the
that up.
website. The UFOs over Cashers, which is a mountaintop town, which is actually about 40 minutes from where I live. But there were so many UFOs being seen up there that we just started a web page about UFOs. Well, that our website's gone way beyond its name because we do all sorts of things now, but that's how it started.
It's interesting that you bring up the little people because, oops, where'd it go? In the chat room, Einsgeja, I'm sure I'm not saying that right, said, does the government say anything about fairies or sprites too?
I have never heard anything coming from the government regarding either one of those. I think they're able to just, they don't, that's just, in their opinion, a fanciful kind of thing, and they just don't pay attention to it or don't acknowledge it in public.
yeah. Mhm.
Did that answer the question? I don't know.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
So
think
there are
so.
there are pictures of fairies, and in fact, in the picture gallery on Broadcast Team Alpha, we have, I think I have 2 or 3 different pictures where the fairy was being investigated forensically by a team of doctors, and they see them about 7 or 8 inches long, and they have a tail with a stinger at the end, and you can see them there. And these were found and verified, written up, and very well. This all over in England. That's probably where there are more of them. I don't know.
I did do an article not that long ago about, they call it the Pedro Man. It's a little mummy that some miners found. I can't remember. I think it's like 12 inches tall, maybe. And it had been beaten to death. You could see its brain,
Aw.
and the spine was broken, and I don't know, it had been beaten to death. But they analyzed it. It was a legitimate mummy of this little creature that's about, I'm sorry, I can't remember. It's like 12, 13 inches in height. And that should have been convincing to anybody. Now, that's not a fairy, but it is very small, and it's smaller than the little people I've written about. The little people I've written about are more in the 3 foot 3.5 foot tall category.
Mhm. Fascinating.
Yeah. And then again, we have the pygmies, which is probably about 3.5, 4 foot tall, maybe perfect human looking people. They're
And
just
so are
short.
the little people, so are the Cherokee little people. They're not
Yeah.
like a dwarf, they're not out of proportion. They look like little people.
Mhm.
So, and when I wrote about that, I didn't intend to write the book, but when one thing led to another, and I got connected to old timers that were, well beyond retirement, who had worked on construction projects at Western Carolina University. And when they had done that, they had found these little tunnels, a whole network of them. Wherever they went to build a new building, they would find these square cut tunnels with an arched top. And they went everywhere, and they found a little skeleton. Um, um,
Mhm.
I spent many Saturdays one year just interviewing these old timers around their kitchen tables, because I found out none of this had ever been recorded. Nobody had written down their stories. And since they were mostly in their 80s, I thought, I have got to get this recorded.
Wow.
And I simply did that book because I wanted to preserve the information
Mhm.
before, the sources disappeared.
Yes. Fascinating.
I,
Question in the chat room. Can
Yeah.
Mary share her knowledge on dinosaur fossils found around Antarctica or in Antarctica?
I can't give you the year on it. I've done 2 articles on it, I believe. Yes, there's been dinosaurs that have been found, or dinosaur remains that have been found since all this melting started. So it's not just ancient cities that are being found. They're finding, I think I wrote about 2 of the findings that were really in the part of Antarctica that would be the closest to where these volcanoes are. So it was melting fast there. So yeah, not only that, they have found fossils of ancient forest. And I've done an article on that one too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Again, with photos, always with photos. So
I love all of this information. So great to have you.
Yeah.
thank you. You're very
You know,
kind.
we're told that we have at least 6 different civilizations that have grown and collapsed, grown again and collapsed. And what you see in Antarctica, maybe the first or some of the first, they date back millions of years, like 30 to
34
60
million years,
million.
34 million years ago is a very long time. Like I said,
Yeah.
compare it to the Great Pyramid, and it's nothing. 5,000 years ago is nothing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite remarkable. But they still built cities with square cubes like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw a picture on your website also about that was in Antarctica, where you could see there was like kind of like a whole city there. You could see streets because there were walls, like you say, and then was a little bit, maybe a little broader distance until the next wall starts. So it kind of looked like maybe there was a walkway or a street or something in the middle there.
I know which one you're talking about, and it's in the book. And it could be a wall with part of it broken in the middle. It could have been a bridge. It could have been a walkway. But on one side of, let's call it a bridge. On one side of the bridge, you can see the cube-shaped structure of a city. On the other side, we found it too. So it could have been a very spread out metropolitan area.
Yeah.
Or that could have been a dam for a river. Who knows?
Yeah.
But the pictures are there, and people can look at them and try to decide for themselves what they think it is. And again, with the stuff in Antarctica, I provide the coordinates also.
Awesome.
I think there's a lot more people on Earth than we know about. We have the little people. We have, the 12, 13 foot tall person that you talked about, and then we have the giant. We have evidence of that. We got skeleton. One skeleton was found in Saudi Arabia. I think it was 31 foot long or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, we got those pictures. And then we have the little guy that is about that long that was found in the Atacama Desert in
Yes,
Chile.
I've seen pictures of that, and it has a very different shaped head. It's like almost like a helmet that somebody in the medieval times would have worn.
Yeah, and that was perfect humanoid form. That didn't look
Correct.
like a human, but it had the arms and legs and the head, and you know, you had a rib cage, and it had a humanoid form to it. And
Right.
I'm not so sure that's an alien. I think maybe there's something that lived there
That's
in
very
caves.
possible. Very
Yeah.
possible.
People in the chat room are asking for your website again, Mary Joyce.
Okay,
please.
it's the first three words are easy. Sky ships over. All right, everybody can spell that. Sky ships over. Cashers is the name of the mountaintop town. It's spelled just like a cashier at the grocery store. Skyshipsovercashers.com. And
Thank you.
we have archives in every single section, and the things that we're talking about probably would be mostly found in a section called Global Links. So on the homepage on the left-hand side, there's a section called Global Links. You can dive into that, and the archives are, you know, go deep. Like I said, the website's been there since 2008.
Yeah, get in the picture gallery in there, because you're going to see some really neat stuff.
So
that's where I lost myself for about 2 hours.
Mhm.
There's so much stuff on there. I wish I had a better memory. I can't even quote myself anymore. There's so much stuff on that website. So
yeah. Well,
and thank goodness we have computers, because if I had all this in paper files, I'd have the entire house filled to the ceilings, because thank goodness the computer. So.
Yeah, I asked you earlier what your next book was going to be about. This one just came out, and you're kind of coming up for air now after doing that. But
those are my exact words. I had just finished. You are really getting the early version of anything about this book. So you're on the cutting edge of this one. So
that's good. That's good.
So even though the research has taken place over many years, when it gets down to writing, it's like I locked myself up for a month and didn't come up for air. So even my arm is tired from using the mouse.
That's when you know you've done a lot of work.
When you talk about UFO pictures, have you thought about getting a 4th generation night vision goggles where you can see higher up into the light spectrum than what your eyes can do, and you see some really incredible stuff up there?
I do not have one. I have been with people and I've seen what you're talking about. And if my budget were totally unlimited, I probably would invest in a whole lot of different kinds of equipment, but there's some limitations on that. Just to keep a website going, and all the stuff that goes with that costs quite a bit of money. And we don't do any ads or anything on it, because I don't want to be contaminated by somebody else's perspective or desires. And so it's expensive just to maintain a website.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate everything that you do, and your integrity and your commitment to excellence. Really, really amazing.
Thank you. And I'm delighted to be on with you. And just know that you guys are part of the disclosure.
Yay.
I mean,
Thank
really,
you.
because I agree with you. All this talk about the government's going to disclose all this, not unless somebody shows up and puts a gun to their head. You know, that's not the way we're going to learn about it. That's for certain.
So true. So true.
Yeah, speaking of disclosure, I don't think the government's gonna, they can say, oh yeah, this telescope found another planet where we see this water, there is most likely people there, or they found little fossilized microbes on one of the moons out there. that's the kind of disclosure I expect from them. I don't think there's going to be disclosure.
I have
for-
felt that way from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. They will only let stuff out when they kind of get put in a corner and have to put something out. Because those little, what do they call them, tic tacs that are being caught on radar, that's no big deal. No big deal
No.
at all. So,
That's great. Augie, do you want to ask Mary Joyce your favorite question before we go?
Oh, yeah.
oh dear.
Okay, here it goes. Now, Mary, if you could speak to the whole world and the world was listening, what would you tell them?
I could only say one thing. This world desperately needs us all to be nice to each other.
Amen.
Desperately.
Amen.
It's that simple.
That's
The
true.
world, if no matter which philosophy or religion you really dig deep into, they all go back to love. And the world needs love. We got to quit fighting. We got to disagree nicely. We just need to reclaim our manners. I guess that would be my most important message.
That's
Yeah.
a beautiful message. I love that.
I would
Thank you
love to
so
have
much, Mary Joyce.
Thank you. You guys have a great evening. Take care.
Thank you for being with us.
Augie, see you next week.
Yep. Yep.
Bye,
See you next week.
everybody. Thanks for the chat room. Bye, everybody. Much love, everybody.